You guys got me? How's it going? Good, good. That's a beautiful crowd. It's good to be back in the Northeast. I don't know when the last time I was back in the Northeast was, but this is where, as you alluded to, I got my start with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on Long Island, of all places, in New York, and not a lot of people, not a lot of competition for jobs and natural resources on Long Island, so they let me slide right in, which was great. And then Nature Conservancy on Long Island, Albany Pine Bush Preserve, etc. So it's cool to be back in this area, see some familiar faces and stuff. Helen asked me to talk about building sustained prescribed fire capacity. And, what she just talked about is a big piece of that. We need to do more of that. We need to do more of that in the East. We need to do more of that in the West. But over the course of my career, I've been part of several groups that have worked to really solve the problem of how do we put more fire on the ground. And that's the problem that we have. It's not just one fire problem, it's many fire problems, right? And it takes a whole lot of different brains in the room to figure out what those strategies are to alleviate those problems. It takes people in a particular place, and it's not a cookie cutter thing. Trex is pretty cookie cutter, at least from the boundaries of it. It's 3 pieces, it's outreach, it's training, it's increasing local capacity. And beyond that, it's whatever you want, all right? But what we can't have is necessarily a cookie cutter approach. One of the things that we've been fortunate enough to do in my neck of the woods right now is work with our local partners to figure out what are the ideal tactics to hit those strategies to increase the fire footprint in South Carolina in a landscape like the Southern Blue Ridge Escarpment. And the big piece of it is we just need more people. We just need more boots on the ground. We don't have growing budgets. Everybody's budgets are continuing to shrink and dwindle or stay static if you're lucky enough. But when we do have pulses of money that come in, how do we take that money and wave a magic wand and turn it into boots on the ground so that we can do something with it? So that's what we'll talk about today. Again, a lot of it is going to be based on what the local need is and what the local conditions are. Brian Schaffler, I don't know how many of you know Brian Schaffler, but he is a dear friend of mine. I love him like a brother. And if you get a chance to work with him, savor it, because it's really fun, and he'll take you on a wild ride. He and I put together this is like a summary of some of the benefits that we saw as an outcome of our partnership between the Forest Service and the Nature Conservancy in South Carolina. Overall partnership strengthens. We can use fire as a beginning point, as a jumping off point to do land protection, to look at freshwater stuff, to do silvicultural stuff. It doesn't have to be just a fire footprint. It can be fire as the foundation, and then we build off of that. It adds value to our greater fire program. The Forest Service would give the Nature Conservancy money, we'd hire a fire crew, but we got to use that fire crew as well. Well, that's pretty cool. It adds value to the Forest Service's fire program. It decreases the time that it takes them to actually pull off a burn. They don't have to, try to piece together a militia-style burn. It fills staffing gaps. We'll hire people that are sawyers. We'll hire people that are helicopter crew members. We'll put them through plastic sphere dispenser operator training, and then they can ride in the ship and drop ping pong balls. We've hired people with all kinds of crazy skills that the Forest Service then can use. Cohesive strategy, anyone? Definitely supports the cohesive strategy in a number of ways, and this is good reporting for folks in the Forest Service. It's good reporting for folks in state agencies as well, state forestry agencies. if you're needing to hit those marks, this is a good place to do it. It improves the greater fire community, and what I usually tell people is, if I'm doing my job, you're going to come into a fire program that we touch, and you're going to come in as a certain level of a firefighter. When you leave, you should be better than you were when you started here. And if we do that, we're growing the fire world, we're making a better fire community in the long run. And then finally, success attracts more money. The more money you get, the more boots you put on the ground, the greater your success is, the more continuity, the more sustained funding that you're going to actually have. Here's some of our successes. The outlier here would be South Carolina 2010 to 2014. That's when this is only in the southern Blue Ridge Escarpment and central Appalachians. So Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. 2010 to 2014, we had an independent crew that operated on the Sumter National Forest in South Carolina, and so those are their numbers. But all in all, since 2010, 312 fires for 160,000 acres. And those are fires that the Nature Conservancy in some way has had an impact or an assist in pulling off those fires. We put people on the ground, they were dragging torches, they were holding the line, they were spraying water, they were up in the air, they were doing something to help that fire come off. So 312 fires, 160,000 acres across, 5 states? 6 states? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 6 states. That's nothing to sneeze at. I don't think that we started in South Carolina, but Brian Schaffler and I, Brian moved to South Carolina about the same time that I did. He had worked for the Green Mountains up in Vermont. I worked at the Pine Bush, so we kind of knew the same people. He called me up and said, hey, let's have a beer, let's have some lunch, let's talk about stuff. And that's what we did, and thus started a beautiful friendship. I'll cover this as I talk. About the same time the Obama administration was coming in, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was coming down the pike, and there was a lot of money. And Brian said, hey, we got 25 grand. What can we do if the Forest Service was to give you 25 grand? What could we do? And so he and I would have 3-hour lunches where we would eat a burger and drink a beer, as Helen said, and then spitball ideas. And we came up with an idea of, here's what we could do with 25, here's what we could do with 50, here's what we could do with 100. And they rolled that up to the Forest Service regional office, and they liked the $100,000. And then they came back and said, what could you do for $200,000? And we said, well, we'll just double it. What could you do for $400,000? We'll just double it again. And so what started out as a $25,000 pot of money ended up being $400,000, which is pretty awesome. And that started us in 2010. And then it seems like Kyle Smith went up to Virginia, and you guys got going with fire crews in Virginia, Sam. Other fire crews started springing up in the Southeast as well, which has been pretty outstanding. But these are sources of funds that we've used in South Carolina that other folks have used in Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, state and private forestry, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, that's gone away. Title II money, secure rural schools. So the Forest Service, they take a portion of their timber proceeds and put it back to the counties, right? To offset lands that aren't in tax rolls. Well, the county can refuse that. When the county refuses that, that money goes back to the Forest Service, and the Forest Service has to figure out what to do with it. We'll give it to us, and we'll turn it into boots on the ground, and we'll burn some woods. So that's what we did. Stewardship funds. U.S. Chief, the Forest Service Chief, if you ever have a chance, if you're ever in a room at a cocktail party and the Chief of the Forest Service is there, it is your duty to go up and talk to that person and tell them about your program and tell them why it's awesome and tell them that you need some more money. because that's what I did with the chief when at a cocktail party in Charleston. The very next Tuesday, I got a call from Brian Schaffler. We got $500,000. We need an agreement hammered out in 5 days. Okay. That's pretty awesome. Supplemental fuels projects. If you work with the Forest Service, if you know the Forest Service, these folks are applying for monies all the time. Supplemental fuels projects. That money's out there. It's at the regional office. Go get it. Joint Chiefs money. That's coming back around. Direct budget obligation. If you find yourself in a pinch, the Forest Service can actually take money out of their budget and give it to you and obligate that to another organization. They can. All right? So just be aware of that if you're in kind of a stopgap. And Stevens funds. If you work for a state forestry agency, you're probably familiar with Stevens funds. That's money that comes out of the Forest Service, the regional office, down to the state, and I'm making generalizations here, but that money can be used on non-federal lands within 10 miles of a federal boundary, okay? These are just key components of forming and coming up with partnerships and collaborating and developing sustained capacity. It's important to meet people, to talk to people, to drink a beer with people, to fish with people, go train with people, go burn with people, develop relationships up and down. And if you know one person, you should go 2 or 3 steps up the ladder, the chain of command above them, and 2 or 3 steps down the ladder, the chain of command from them, because people leave all the time. And if you have relationships 2 or 3 steps up and 2 or 3 steps down, you've got continuity of relationships. To figure out what your shared conservation goals are, what's important to you. Explain to your partners what's important to you. Have them explain to you what's important to them. I put in here, don't be limited by differing goals. It's like a Venn diagram. Where you overlap, that's where you target. All right? Don't expect that I'm from the Nature Conservancy and this is why this is important. And this is where you should be burning. If you're going to give us money and we're going to give you resources, then we want you to be burning right here. That dog doesn't hunt. All right? You take it all. You go big picture. And eventually they'll come around. Eventually it'll come around to burning in high priority areas that you fill. Okay? You feel like needed. Don't expect it to come right out of the gates. Talk about your values, ensure understanding, and then gradually work towards that full goal alignment if you can. Prepare in advance for available funds. I want to get down here so I can see. Have some harebrained ideas in your back pocket. You know, we talked to Helen about harebrained ideas and doing treks. And it seemed like a really big, silly idea, but we did it. And apparently we're doing it again, so stay tuned. But conceptualize the ideas with your partner. Flesh those ideas out. Figure out a budget that can expand and contract, right? So we started with 25 grand with the Forest Service, and we figured out, like, what can we do with 25? What can we do with 50? And we knew that we could always peel it back if we wanted to, right? So flesh out ideas, develop a budget that can expand and contract, get shovel ready, be ready, because you never know when money comes. Have one-pagers, have proposals. Johnny Stowe and I did a proposal like a few years ago for NRCS and doing work on private lands with the South Carolina Forestry Commission. It languished for 2 years, and then a whole bunch of money came down from NRCS to do some work on it. We only got like partial, mild success out of our proposal, but it was something that we had, and we shopped it around to NRCS, to state folks, etc. So shop it around. Figure out where your match is coming from. The bean counters will want to know. All right? If you have an idea, like I got to match 20% or 30%, where is that coming from? What does that look like? Know where it's coming from. See if you can like pull it off the tree like an apple. That's the easiest thing to do instead of trying to figure it out on the fly when you got to put an agreement together in 4 or 5 days. Agreements expire. They will always expire if you're working with a state or a federal agency that has money tied to it. Make them the maximum possible. You can always modify it and shove some more money back into it if you want to. If they give you $100,000 but you can write it for a 7-year agreement, then write it for a 7-year agreement and then expect some more money. Put a good product on the ground. All right? It's like under promise and over deliver kind of thing. You got to keep them coming back for more. And I would encourage you not to, and I don't think any of us do in the mountains down in the south. I don't think we put any acreage goals in our agreements. Do you, Sam? No. The last thing you want to do is put an acreage goal in a burning agreement, because as sure as the sun comes up tomorrow, it will be the rainiest 5 years on record, and you will underachieve. All right? No acreage goals. Days available. We can have our crew available to you for 120 days. That works. Immediately discuss sustained funding. Never miss an opportunity to talk about long-term funding. Go back for big projects, big price tags. Like I said, incremental costs, menus of options. Have it laid out. Demonstrate short-term success. Show people what you have done. Get them excited for more. Get them excited to give you more money. And begin long-term planning as soon as possible. If you can start thinking big picture, we have money for 2 years. What happens at the end of 2 years? What are we going to do? Why don't we start planning for year 3 through year 10 right now? What do we want? What does it look like? Don't be afraid to fail. Be persistent, and you're going to learn a whole lot in building relationships and forming up some capacity and putting people to work and putting boots on the ground. Fire season up here is still in the spring, right? Like February, March, April, right? Something like that. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, give or take. Guess who's out of work during that time? People who fight fires in the West. There's a whole bunch of people out here who love to be employed, who see a lot more fire up close and personal on prescribed fires than they do out west, digging line with their head down. All right? These are some of the areas that we'd like to push. We want to push the margins of agreements. We want to take the money and move it out into private lands and state lands, even if it's federal. Good neighbor authority, state action plans. I heard somebody mention state action plans, state wildlife action plans, state forest action plans. These are places where we can push the margins. NRCS funding, identifying Stevens funds candidates, dedicated prescribed fire capacity, etc. I want to share a little kernel of knowledge that I learned at a fire review a couple of months ago. There was a woman from the Washington office of the Forest Service. The regional fuels person from Region 8 was there. She said, every 30 days, I'm on the phone talking to our regional fuels person and other people in the regional offices looking to put money somewhere in projects. Every 30 days. In fact, she had just gotten off the phone with Mike 2 weeks prior, and she was looking for a place to put $2 million. $2 million. And Mike had a stack of stuff on his desk, and he was able to figure out. Or if he doesn't, he's not able to figure out. Don't let that phone call go and your proposal's not on that desk, all right, or your idea. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of acres burned. I wish we'd had something on his desk, but we didn't. Oh well. But I learned that. Form those relationships at the regional office. If you're in Region 9, Brian Schaffler, pick up the phone and call it. He's a great conversationalist. And I know we'll probably be competing for the same amount of money or the same pot of money, but I just wanted to share that with you all. It's out there. It's available. We can do this. You can put people to work. You can put fire on the ground, and you can have some of the same successes that we've had in the South as well. So that's it. Questions?